Hello, my name is Highland Harris. Welcome to Louis Armstrong's House Museum here in Corona, Queens, New York. Louis Armstrong was among the most important figures of the 20th century. He took this music that was emerging around New Orleans and he spread this message of jazz around the country and then around the world. He was the first jazz musician to have a #1 hit and the last jazz musician to have a #1 hit. Louis Armstrong moved here in 1943. He was on the road about 300 days a year, and his wife refused to live this kind of a lifestyle, so she bought this house without Louis knowing anything about it, and she sent him a message saying, "We now have a home." He took a cab here, and Lucille was waiting for him at the door, and she walked him through the house room by room, and he fell in love with it. He stayed here until he passed away in 1971. The house, as you see it, is exactly the way she left it when she passed away in 1983. When Louis moved here, all of these houses, including this one, had a wooden clapboard. Lucille decided to brickface this house. Now, Louis was incensed that Lucille would do something like that because he put a lot of his energy into blending in with the neighbors as opposed to standing out. He knocked on all the doors on this side of the block. He offered to brickface this entire block. The design of this house went through various changes, and in many ways it does look like a museum in the sense of every room is a different exhibit. As we walk through the house, we're going to enter into the living room. This living room really represents Louis's travels, so you'll see gondolas from Italy, dolls from Japan, and various artwork. You'll see a portrait of Louis here. This portrait was based off of a picture that was in Vanity Fair magazine. Louis Armstrong was the first African-American in Vanity Fair. This was in the mid-1930s. This was Louis's favorite portrait of himself, and this picture would move throughout the house as the house went through various changes. To the left here is the piano. This piano was an heirloom that belonged to Lucille's family, and in many ways the piano was a mark of middle class. It became kind of a furniture piece. Neither one of them played piano, actually. The living room was a room where the Armstrongs socialized. So we have documents of them throwing parties here, various recordings of Louis telling jokes in the living room. Now, right on the table, you'll see a Bible that was given to Louis by a friend of his, a trumpet player. That Bible had a lot of significance to Louis because Louis, as a child, had worked for a Jewish family named the Karanovskis. They gave Louis his first job, and with that job, he bought his first trumpet. So Louis always wore a Star of David for the rest of his life. One of the most noticeable things in this entire house is the wallpaper. Ceilings, walls, each closet has its own wallpaper pattern. This is a hemp kind of a wallpaper, original as the way Louis and Lucille left it. In the summertime, when it gets very hot, you can actually smell their smoke sometimes come right out of that wallpaper. We're going to pass Louis's bathroom. Gold-plated fixtures and even pipes, mirrored from ceiling to floor. Without question, the kitchen is one of the most famous rooms in this house. This kitchen is a perfectly preserved late 60s kitchen that reflected the space age. Very influenced by the World's Fair, which was just a 15-minute walk from here. The blue cabinets are made out of wood, which surprises everybody when we notice that. It's almost a piano-type finish. Those are piano door hinges and piano lid handles. This room reflects that Louis Armstrong did not see himself or his taste as a relic. One thing about the second floor that feels completely different than the first floor is that this is the Armstrongs' personal space. Here, the silver mylar wallpaper almost looks like tin foil. Very bright, very reminiscent of the late 60s. As we walk into the bathroom, you will notice, again, the same wallpaper, and above the door here, what some people think is ventilation is actually speakers. Louis would have music pumped into his bathroom from his den. And right here behind the door, you'll notice a volume control. This room has a lot of poignancy because Louis passed away in this room in his sleep, July 6, 1971, after a birthday party where he felt reinvigorated enough that he called up his manager and his doctor, saying that he was ready to go back out on the road and start performing. Now we head into Lewis's den. In many ways, this is the highlight of the tour. He sat in this chair. He wrote one of his autobiographies. Here he entertained. His celebrity friends would sit in these chairs. His neighborhood friends would sit in these chairs. Lucille would say this room was sacred. It was off limits. This wall originally was covered in Lewis's artwork. He would take newspaper clippings and he would create collages that covered this entire wall. And when Lewis would travel, Lucille would rip these newspaper clippings down. She thought it was beneath a man of his age and stature to do this type of thing. So then Lewis began to put those collages on each one of these boxes, which he stored his tapes. Behind his chair, you'll notice state-of-the-art recording equipment. He would store his tapes in this cabinet right here. You'll see Lewis's actual handwriting, where he did all the work for future historians. On each of these tapes, we have recordings of Lewis practicing, telling jokes, hanging out backstage. Sometimes he would put records on his turntable and then record his reaction to hearing the music for the very first time. So Lewis was an archivist. Within this house, after he'd passed away, they found over 700 of these personal 2-hour reels. Outside the den here is the terrace. On warm, sunny days, Lewis and Lucille would sit here, and often Lewis would play trumpet out into the street to entertain the neighbors. Can you imagine walking by and hearing Louis Armstrong playing trumpet one story above you? The longer I've worked here, the more I've been humbled by how Louis Armstrong, who was known all over the world, had millions of dollars, chose to live in a working-class neighborhood. At the height of his fame, his peers were Frank Sinatra, Bing Crosby, Nat King Cole, but Louis chose to live in Corona, where his next-door neighbor was a telephone operator. There were school teachers and janitors. When Louis moved here, he felt like he had made it. I hope you enjoyed this look into the home of Louis and Lucille Armstrong. It's a perfectly preserved piece of music and designed history.
Thanks for watching. Like what you see on the show? Well, be sure to subscribe to our channel. We have so many more beautiful homes to share. It's all about love. Share these homes, you know?